Here Chesterton tries to imagine things by looking through the lens of a child. You know that a child is not affected by inconveniences. And a childlike attitude is shown by Chesterton here. But Chesterton says that it is needed in order to make our life beautiful, tolerable. You should have to take up the attitude of the child. Otherwise, what is the meaning in grumbling and complaining? Even if you grumble and complain, you have to suffer all these damages. And critics say that it is a very romantic approach. That is saying that a place in floods is very beautiful. Because it is beautiful. A town overflowing with water may be a beautiful sight. But you cannot neglect or ignore the negative sides of it. How much it affects the people, especially the poor people who will be rendered homeless. And you remember, I suppose that you remember the flood, the great flood that affected us 2 years back in 2018. We are all victims of that flood. We know how much we have suffered, how much losses we have to encounter, and how many days and weeks we spend in cleaning our own houses. Then in this context, can we see the beauty of the flood? It is not easy for people like us. But Chesterton says that it is needed. Because the attitude of the child is needed. We are more cared about the society around. But Chesterton says that you consider yourself as a child, or view things from the viewpoint of a child. Then you will be comfortable. And again, another example he presents here in this context. That is, imagine that an adult is going to the railway station to get into a train. And there, when you reached the station, you realize that the train is 1 hour late or half an hour late. An adult, we people cannot tolerate that. We will become irritated. Oh, how much time I have to spend in this railway station, in the railway platform. And there is no other go. And so we will be sitting in the platform all the time grumbling and complaining. Oh, what an unlucky person I am. I should not have started the journey today. That is why I am held up here in the station. But imagine a child or a boy who is caught up in the railway station. If a child hears that the train is late, the child is very happy. And the child will be very happily, it will be watching the surroundings. There are many exciting things in the railway platform for the child. And take your own case, you youngsters. You are very happy if you are held up in the railway station. You can talk at length with your friends on your mobile. And you can use your time on the mobile. You are ready to have it for hours without any complaint. And so that is the difference between the perspective of the child and the perspective of the adult. And what G.K. Chesterton recommends is the childlike attitude even for the elders. And so talking about the theme of the essay, critics say that this essay itself is an example. He deals with the theme of escape, embarrassment, and acceptance. That is what G.K. Chesterton recommends is an escape from the harsh realities of life. Only in that way you can have a happy living in this earth. And he says that if there are difficulties, try to escape from it instead of without brooding over the inconveniences. You may be embarrassed, but in that case, you will be able to accept it with a happy mind. That is the acting like a child while encountering inconveniences. This is the theme that is treated in the essay. And so, what is the theme? It is the theme of escape, embarrassment, and acceptance. The author recommends us to act like a child while encountering inconveniences. And when you talk about this attitude, and again I told you that critics say that it is a romantic attitude but not practical. Seeing positivity even in negativity is not possible. These are all the criticism by the critics. People say that it is not possible. Chesterton, you can make your own ideology, you can make your theory, but it is not at all easy to practice. But we know that writers, poets, they are different from ordinary people, isn't it? And here I make a reference to another great writer and a poet. Usually you have noticed that whenever I try to explain an author, I will make cross references with other writers, authors. That is, these cross references will make your study more interesting. And again, you will have a better understanding of your text. And you will hear about the great writers of literature. And so here I refer to William Wordsworth. Wordsworth, you know, isn't that? A great romantic poet. He was a poet as well as a critic. And again, you all know about his work, Lyrical Ballads. What is Lyrical Ballads? A collection of poems written by Wordsworth and Coleridge. And so since you are literature students, you should have an average idea of all these writers. Okay, and so remember, I am going to make a reference about William Wordsworth in this context. And then, who is William Wordsworth? A great poet and a critic. And he is remembered as the one who wrote the Lyrical Ballads along with the help of Coleridge. And as an introduction to this Lyrical Ballads, he wrote a preface. Preface means an introduction. And there he defines a poet. Poet or any writer. There he says that a poet is different, an author is different from ordinary people in their sensitivity and sensibility. You got the point? What is the difference between a writer and ordinary people like us? We differ in degrees of sensitivity and sensibility. And so, it is difficult for us to think like a child, to imagine like a child, to see beauty even in the floods. But for writers it is possible. They are highly sensitive. And so you can see Wordsworth in this context, his idea reflected in this point. That is, for ordinary people like us, you cannot view things from the viewpoint of a child. It is very difficult. But writers can. That's the point. And so, here again, you remember, I told you earlier, in this essay, two viewpoints are given. The viewpoint of the adult and the viewpoint of the child. And again, hereafter in the essay, you will see the author making plenty of examples and illustrations on the key point. What is the key point? An inconvenience properly treated will become an exciting adventure. And what is inconvenience then? An adventure wrongly conceived by an unimaginative person. And so, what should be the right perspective? And for that, he gives some examples. Another example is that he says that, see, the title is on running after one's hat. He says that when somebody runs after a hat, especially on a windy day, if there is a strong wind, the hat will be flying off. And the person, the owner of the hat, will be running after that hat. And for people like us, it is a ridiculous situation. And the man who is running after the hat feels ashamed of himself. He cannot leave his hat. And so, on a windy day, when there is a strong wind and when the hat flies off, the man the owner of the hat will be running after the hat. And because of the impact of the strong wind, the hat will be flying and flying away from him, and the man will be rushing after the hat. And when the user of the hat runs after the hat, he is ashamed of himself. And that is the wrong perspective according to G.K. Chesterton. He says that, see, why are you ashamed of running after one's hat? It is your hat. You are running after your hat. What is the problem? Because when you are running after your hat, from the part of the onlooker will be getting pleasure watching the man running after the hat, isn't it? It is a very humorous sight for the onlooker. Onlooker is happy. And then about yourself, when you run after the hat, you are getting enough physical exercise. And so you are getting an advantage, isn't it? And then you should not feel ashamed of it. The onlooker is happy, he is getting pleasure. And when you chase the hat, you are getting enough physical exercise also by running after the hat.